and welcome to Vantage. I'm Alyson Le Grange. Let's get started. It's a big week for West Asia. All eyes are on Egypt, on the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, where a new round of peace talks is underway. These talks that could finally end the war in Gaza. Hamas and Israel delegations are there. They are accompanied by mediators from Qatar and Egypt. And behind them all, watching closely, is Donald Trump. From Washington, he's pushing both sides to move fast. He says time is running out, and he warns of massive bloodshed if they fail. For now, there is cautious optimism. Hamas says it's ready to talk. Israel says it's willing to listen. But the question remains, will there be peace in Gaza? We'll bring you the full story tonight. In other news, India has sent a message to Washington. It says any trade deal must respect its red lines. In Pakistan, tensions are rising in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. In Japan, a new prime minister has taken charge. In France, another one has stepped down. We'll also tell you about Syria's first election since Assad's fall, and a new travel trend called Napations, holidays to catch up on sleep. But first, as always, the headlines.
Venezuela says it has detected a plan by extremists to place explosives in the US Embassy in Caracas. This comes amid spiraling tensions between the two countries. Caracas has warned Washington of what it calls a false flag operation by right-wing extremists. The two countries severed diplomatic ties in 2019, so the US Embassy is largely deserted, except a few local employees. Hundreds of people stage fresh anti-government protests in Madagascar. It's the 12th day of a youth-led movement that has plunged the country into political crisis. The unrest started last month over persistent water and power cuts in the Indian Ocean island, but they have grown into an anti-government movement demanding the president's resignation. Bangladeshi politician Tariq Rahman says he will return home soon to contest the elections scheduled for next year. Rahman has been in self-imposed exile for 17 years. He is the son of former Prime Minister Khaleda Zia and is the acting chairman of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. BNP is widely seen as the frontrunner in the February polls. In India, assembly election dates for the state of Bihar have been announced. Polls in the eastern state of India will be held on the 6th and 11th of November. The counting of votes will take place on 14th of November. The seat-sharing arrangements for both India and NDA alliances are expected to be announced later this week. And the 2025 Nobel Prize in Medicine goes to one Japanese and two American scientists. They were honored for research into how the immune system is kept in check. Their discoveries have been decisive for understanding how the immune system functions and why we do not all develop serious autoimmune diseases.
It's a busy day in West Asia. All the focus is on Egypt, on its Red Sea resort town called Sharm el-Sheikh. This is where the crucial peace talks are happening. Talks to end the war in Gaza. Over in Washington, Donald Trump is getting impatient. He is pushing both sides to move fast. The question, will these talks lead to peace? Now let's focus on Sharm el-Sheikh. The Hamas delegation has already arrived. It is led by Khalil al-Hayya. He is a senior Hamas leader who lives in Doha. In fact, he was one of the targets of Israel's airstrikes. Al-Hayya escaped, but his son did not. On the other side, the Israeli delegation is arriving in batches. Their chief negotiator is expected to arrive later this week. So Israel is testing the waters. They want to see if Hamas is serious about a deal. Also in Egypt are the mediators. Qatar's Prime Minister is slated to attend the talks, so will Egypt's Intelligence Minister. And like I said, Trump is impatient. Look at his message on Sunday. I am told that the first phase should be completed this week, and I am asking everyone to move fast. I will continue to monitor this centuries-old conflict. Time is of the essence, or massive bloodshed will follow. Unquote. So Trump is keen to push on. He wants the first phase to be completed this week. If not, he says there could be massive bloodshed. Clearly, the strategy is to put pressure on Hamas. Trump is pressuring them in two ways. One is the ticking clock. The second is the threat of more Israeli attacks. But will it be enough to scare Hamas? Now, late on Friday, they responded to Trump's peace plan. They agreed to two crucial parts of it. One, to release all hostages. And two, to cede power to Palestinian officials. But they have also opposed two parts of the deal. One is to give up their arms, and the second is to give up their political ambitions. Trump's deal says Hamas will play no role in governing Gaza in the future, but Hamas is against such a clause. Nonetheless, Trump was satisfied. He posted a message on social media. The US president asked Israel to stop the bombing immediately, and chances are this caught Netanyahu off guard. After Hamas agreed to the deal, Trump and Netanyahu had a call. Netanyahu tried to downplay the news. He told Trump that there is nothing to celebrate. But Trump fired back. He asked Netanyahu why he was always negative. He asked the Israeli Prime Minister to take the win. Since then, Israel has toned down the rhetoric. Now, reports from Gaza suggest a de-escalation. Yes, the occasional strikes continue, but there is no large-scale bombing like before. Netanyahu says he is hopeful that Hamas will agree to all demands. If not, he is ready to escalate again.
I can't tell you if Hamas will agree to it. I think that it's possible. I hope it'll happen, but I can't guarantee that it'll happen. And so if it doesn't happen, what President Trump has said is that he will back Israel completely in acting forcefully against Hamas. Well, let's hope that we can finish it the easy way and not the hard way.
There's pressure on Netanyahu from all sides. His top ally, Trump, wants him to end the war. The Arab world wants him to stop. European capitals are protesting. Even his own people are pushing for a hostage deal. Today's talks will be crucial. They will give both sides an idea of what to expect. It's the first ray of hope since March. That's when Israel abandoned a ceasefire deal with Hamas. Since then, hundreds of Gazans have died. Israel has also launched new operations to occupy Gaza City. But months later, there is hope.
The entire world is united in its desire to end the war, to stop the fighting, and to establish a Palestinian state eventually. I see a dim light at the end of the tunnel.
We are worried, really, that the deal they are talking about will fail, because every time they reach a solution, they say a truce will be declared. We wake up on a terrible nightmare at the end. No, we hope to go beyond this stage. The truce comes into effect, and we go back to Gaza City.
If both sides strike a deal, then what? The first stage is to release the hostages. In exchange, Israel will stop the attacks. The following stage involves Hamas surrendering its weapons. In return, Israel will slowly withdraw from Gaza. Trump has posted a map to detail the withdrawal. It shows 3 different stages. In the first, Israel will occupy 55% of Gaza. In the second, they will occupy 40% of Gaza. And in the final stage, around 15%. Now, this is designated as an Israeli security buffer zone. But will this plan lead to peace? We have seen similar talks and formulas in the past. But this time, there are 2 key differences. 1, Trump's involvement. He is driven by his dream of a Nobel Peace Prize. It's not just a matter of policy for him, it's an obsession. And that means he can exert more pressure on Netanyahu. Secondly, there is widespread support. Most countries in the world have backed Trump's plan. Even Iran has signaled support for it. So if all goes to plan, we could see a quick breakthrough. Now let's talk about trade. It's a crucial week for New Delhi. Talks with the United States are still on. They are aimed at breaking the tariff deadlock. Indian negotiators are also meeting key allies this week. Their goal is to build new trade partnerships, even as discussions with Washington continue. So where do things stand with the US? Last month, the talks had regained momentum, but how much progress has really been made? Now, conversations are still on, but it seems that both sides are still stuck on key issues. Over the weekend, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar spoke. He admitted that differences remain. In his words, India and the US have not arrived at a landing ground. That means negotiations are still in motion. Each side is searching for common ground, but India remains firm about its red lines.
Whatever happens, at the end of the day, there has got to be a trade understanding with the United States. There has to be one because it is the world's largest market, but also because it is, much of the world has reached those understandings. But it has to be an understanding where our bottom lines, our red lines are respected. In any agreement, there are things you can negotiate and there are things you can't.
The United States wants easier access to Indian markets. It's pushing for barrier-free trade, but that comes with risks. For India, it could hurt homegrown producers. 2 sectors could be exposed, and this is agriculture and MSMEs, the micro, small and medium enterprises. These are the backbone of India's growth story, and that's why India is pushing back. New Delhi also wants to protect its energy sovereignty. Jaishankar addressed that issue as well. He spoke about Russia's oil purchases.
In addition, there is a second tariff, which we publicly said we regard it as very unfair, which has picked on us for sourcing energy from Russia, when of course there are other countries who have done so, including countries who right now have a far more antagonistic relationship with Russia than we do.
So, no concessions on energy either. Remember, Donald Trump raised tariffs on Indian exports to 50%. That's among the highest in the world. Trump blamed India's Russian crude purchases for the high tariff, even though China remains Russia's biggest buyer. Now, Jaishankar's remarks point straight at that double standard, and they make India's position clear. New Delhi won't change its policy anytime soon. India will continue to buy Russian oil. Now, that message from Jaishankar is clear and directed at Washington. If the US wants a deal, it must meet India halfway. It must respect India's red lines and stop linking trade with pressure on energy or policy. So the talks with America will continue, but New Delhi isn't waiting. It's expanding its outreach, holding new rounds of trade talks with Europe and the Gulf. This week, India and the EU will take their negotiations forward in Brussels. Both sides are negotiating an ambitious trade pact, and this would be the 14th round of talks. Conversations with Europe have gathered pace ever since Trump kicked off his trade fight, so India and the EU can take a step forward this week. Now, similarly, India is holding talks with Qatar as well. This week, the Commerce Minister, Piyush Goyal, is in Doha. Again, this is to discuss a free trade pact. Minister Goyal is traveling with a high-level business delegation, so this could prove to be a crucial week. It could shape the road ahead for India's trade relationships. It might also open new doors, especially for the trade talks with the US. Because back in America, the patience of American farmers is being tested. Reports say American farmers are having a tough year. Trump's trade war has hit them hard, so much so that they may need a bailout. Apparently, the White House is discussing a package. There's talk of a multi-billion-dollar bailout. Now, why is this necessary? Because farm bankruptcies are surging. They are at their highest since 2021. And that is a serious warning sign for Trump. Remember, farmers are a key political constituency for Trump. They helped him to win the last election. They bought into his tariff pitch, particularly in the red states. And now Trump's flagship policy is facing the ultimate test. New Delhi will be watching this closely. It would want to see how this situation shapes up. Perhaps this may create openings for India to reach out and narrow the gap on a trade deal. And moving on to Pakistan, their defense minister is at it again. I'm talking about a man called Khawaja Asif. He has issued a warning to India. Asif has warned India of severe consequences, saying that Islamabad will bury India under debris of its own warplanes. It comes after the comments of the Indian Army chief. Now, he talked about erasing Pakistan from the world map if it failed to stop terrorism on its soil. Our next report brings you the details.
For a region Pakistan likes to call its jewel in the crown, Pakistan-occupied Kashmir has been in chaos. What began as a peaceful strike has turned into a full-blown revolt. 4 days, protesters flooded the streets of Muzaffarabad and beyond. They were angry, desperate, and unheard. By the time the smoke cleared, 10 people were dead and hundreds injured. Islamabad was forced to scramble. Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif dispatched a high-power delegation led by Raja Pervez Ashraf to negotiate. After 2 nights of desperate talks, a 25-point peace deal was announced, 10 billion Pakistani rupees for Pak's electricity system, 2 new education boards, health cards and diagnostic machines for every district, promises of tunnels, airports, and infrastructure upgrades, and a trimmed-down local cabinet to cut corruption. It sounded impressive, but only on paper. The truth? These are promises Islamabad has made before. The protests weren't about tunnels. They were about trust, and Pakistan has run out of it. And instead of introspection, Pakistan's Defence Minister Khawaja Asif turned to his favourite political trick, waving the India card. He claimed India's leaders, from Rajnath Singh to General Upendra Dwivedi, were making provocative statements to restore their lost credibility. Translation: we're in trouble at home, so let's change the subject. It's a familiar playbook. Every time Pakistan faces domestic unrest, it revives the India threat to deflect attention. After Pakistani-backed terrorists killed 26 people in Pahalgam in April, India hit back. Operation Sindoor targeted terror camps and military assets deep inside Pakistan. Pakistan tried to claim victory, inventing a scoreline 0-6. It suggested that it shot down 6 Indian jets. It's a fantasy no one outside Pakistan believes. So India's army chief issued a strong warning to Pakistan.
इस बार भारत देश पूरी तैयारी के साथ है और इस बार वो संयम नहीं रखेगा जो सिंदूर 1.0 में हमने संयम रखा। इस बार हम आगे की कार्रवाई करेंगे और कुछ ऐसी कार्रवाई करेंगे कि हो सकता है पाकिस्तान को सोचना पड़े कि उसे इतिहास में भूगोल में रहना है कि नहीं रहना है। अगर उसे भूगोल में अपनी जगह बनानी है तो उसके लिए उसे जो स्टेट स्पॉन्सर टेररिज्म जिसको हम बोलते हैं, यानी कि उसका देश जो टेररिज्म को स्पॉन्सर कर रहा है उसे रोकना पड़ेगा।
India's message is simple. No more restraint. No more entertaining backdoor pleas from Pakistan. This has left Islamabad rattled. So, Khwaja Asif has resorted to threatening India, warning he will bury India under the debris of its own warplanes. Here's the problem. Khwaja Asif can threaten India all he wants. He can talk about burying countries under wreckage. But the truth is simpler. India doesn't need to erase Pakistan from the world map. Islamabad is already burying itself under the weight of its own corruption, hypocrisy, and denial.
"2025 has been a tense year in the South China Sea. We have seen repeated clashes between Chinese and Philippine vessels. In response, Manila is moving closer to the US. It is betting on its old ties with Washington. Let's look at the latest move. The US is upgrading a naval base in the Philippines. It's located in the island of Palawan, strategically a very important island. It's located southwest of Manila, and more importantly, it faces the disputed South China Sea. As you know, Beijing claims most of this water body, but their claims were rejected by a UN court. Despite that, it remains a flashpoint. Hence the decision to upgrade this base. Last month, the Pentagon awarded a $975,000 contract. The plan is to expand the Oyster Bay base, and this is located in central Palawan. Once upgraded, it can deploy small boats and sea drones, and experts say that this is meant to project power. And it's not an isolated base. The US and Philippines have a long history of military cooperation. They signed a mutual defense treaty in 1951. They also agreed to share bases in 2014. And this system is called the EDCA, or the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. It allows America to develop and use bases in the Philippines, specifically around 8 or 9 of them. It also allows the US to deploy soldiers there. Now, Washington is involved in modernizing the Philippine Navy. Last year, they gave military aid worth $500 million, and Oyster Bay is just one part of it. Now, there's a shared location in the Balabac town. It has a new 3-kilometer-long runway. Both civilian and military aircraft can use it. Another location is the town of Quezon. The US is building a dock facility there, and it will soon be able to deploy and service small boats. And this site is very close to a major regional flashpoint, the second Thomas Shoal. Both Manila and Beijing claim this island, but Manila maintains an outpost there. Recently, this outpost has led to skirmishes. Chinese ships have tried to intercept Philippine supply runs, and sometimes even firing water cannons. Take a look. The thinking in Manila is clear. They cannot take on China alone, so they must depend on their powerful ally, the US. Of course, the downside is clear. China and America have their own rivalry going on, and Manila could get stuck in between. sort of like a proxy battlefield. Now, this is a deviation from Manila's previous strategy. From 2016 to 2022, the Philippines was led by Rodrigo Duterte. He tried to balance between the US and China, and he also clashed repeatedly with Washington. But Duterte's successor is different. Now, that is Ferdinand Marcos Jr., and he has put Manila firmly in America's corner. He expanded the agreement to share military bases, and he also scaled up cooperation with US allies, like Australia and Japan. So Marcos's strategy is pretty clear. He isn't balancing between America and China. He is using America to deter China. Only time will tell if the strategy succeeds. Now, Japan has had prime ministers since the 1880s, but none of them women. It's a country that has struggled with gender equality, especially when it comes to leadership roles. But finally, the glass ceiling is set to break. Japan's ruling party has elected a female leader for the first time. If things go to plan, she will become Japan's first female prime minister. Sanae Takaichi tried twice to win the leadership contest, first in 2021 and again in 2024. Both times she came up short. But this weekend, she beat 4 male candidates to secure the position. Will this moment lead to a push for gender parity in Japan? What will be Takaishi's biggest challenges? Our next report tells you.
11票、高市早苗君をもって当選者と決しました。
That wasn't just any announcement. That was the sound of a century-old glass ceiling breaking. Japan has waited since the 1880s for a female prime minister. 64-year-old Sanae Takaichi is all set to end that wait. On Saturday, the country's ruling Liberal Democratic Party held its leadership contest. Lawmakers and party members had 5 options to pick from. Takaichi was the lone woman. She will now face a parliamentary test on October 15th. If a majority of lawmakers support her, Takaichi will become Japan's first female prime minister. Her party no longer has a majority in parliament. Nonetheless, her elevation is almost certain.
Rather than being happy, I feel like the tough work starts here. All of us together have a ton of work to do. We have a lot of policies to execute speedily. You will work like draft horses. I myself will throw away the very phrase work-life balance. I will work and work and work and work and keep on working.
Takaichi's election is a big moment in Japan. The country has historically struggled with gender parity, a problem that gets worse as you go up the leadership ladder. For many Japanese, the idea of a female prime minister seemed impossible. Takaichi herself tried twice and failed, only succeeding on her 3rd attempt. Yet, experts warn against jubilation.
Takaichi has always opposed themes like optional separate surnames for married couples or same-sex marriage, issues women tend to support more, and has made her name by opposing them more strongly than men. I think she's somewhat of an honorary male figure. She achieved her position by accommodating our male-dominated society as much as possible.
Takaichi is a conservative nationalist. She is a disciple of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Also, a big fan of former British leader Margaret Thatcher. In fact, many Japanese are dubbing Takaichi the Iron Lady of Japan. Unlike many of her party peers, she doesn't hail from a political family. In her youth, she was detached from politics. Takaichi was a heavy metal drummer, a scuba diver, a car fanatic, and a television host. She first contested elections in 1992, but lost. In 1993, she was elected to parliament, the first of her 11 terms as MP. Recently, Takaichi has served as Japan's economic security minister. She brings with her hopes of a pro-business policy and higher government spending. The markets cheered her victory. Japan's Nikkei index was more than 4% up after the lunch break. Once elected, Takaichi will have a full plate. She will be heading to Malaysia for the ASEAN summit, and then host Donald Trump in Tokyo. Her nationalistic outlook is likely to ruffle some feathers in the region, because in the past, Takaichi has called for amending Japan's pacifist constitution. She is also a proponent of higher military spending. Takaichi has also visited Tokyo's controversial Yasukuni Shrine in the past, a temple where Japan's war criminals from the Second World War are celebrated. But her biggest challenge will be at home. The ruling LDP is going through a major crisis. It has been grappling with corruption cases and falling popularity. As a result, Japan has had 3 prime ministers since 2020. So, Takaichi's first priority will be to regain public trust and restore political stability. How she does that could reshape the country.
It is a political déjà vu for France. Another government has fallen. The Prime Minister has resigned, the 5th one to leave in the last 2 years. His name is Sébastien Lecornu. He was appointed just 26 days ago, and now he is already on his way out. So how did France get here, and what happens next? Like I said, Lecornu was appointed just last month. He was President Emmanuel Macron's trusted defense minister. At just 39, he has survived every reshuffle since 2017. Now that's an impressive feat in a government where prime ministers exit faster than fashion trends. But Lecornu had a big task ahead. He had to build consensus in a split parliament. Yesterday, Lecornu appointed his cabinet. It was largely unchanged from the previous prime minister. And that was the trigger. Parties across the board criticized it. They threatened to vote it down, and thus Lecornu had to resign. He blamed partisan appetites for his resignation.
The third point is that forming the government within the common base has not been smooth and has given rise to a revival of certain partisan appetites, sometimes linked, quite legitimately, to the future presidential election. I say it again, even if this moment is the most parliamentary of the Fifth Republic, we must not, under any circumstances, relive the bad times of the Fourth Republic.
This comes just a month after François Bayrou lost a confidence vote. He was Prime Minister for just 9 months. He tried to push through $38 billion in budget cuts. It included slashing pensions, freezing spending, and squeezing public services, all in the name of reducing debt. The parties did not like that. Bayrou was forced to resign last month, and Lecornu succeeded him. Now, even Lecornu is out. France is without a prime minister again. But why do the French governments keep collapsing? Again, most observers blame one man, French President Emmanuel Macron. Last year, he took a gamble. He called a snap parliamentary election. This was after his party's poor showing in the European vote. The result was a hung parliament. His centrist bloc lost big. Power was fragmented between the far left and the far right. Right now, there are 3 camps in the split French parliament: Macron's centrists, Marine Le Pen's far right, and Jean-Luc Mélenchon's far left. And that has left France essentially ungovernable. So Lecornu's fall was inevitable. And at this rate, the next prime minister won't last much longer. Also, there's the growing economic crisis. France has a public debt of over $3,900 billion. It is equal to 114% of the country's GDP. Its deficit reached 5.8% of its GDP in 2024. The people are frustrated. The poor and middle classes are constantly asked to tighten their belts. Meanwhile, the wealthy remain untouched. There have been multiple protests across the country. So what happens next? Parties are now calling for an early election. Some are calling for Macron to step down. However, the French president has made it clear he will not step down before his term ends in 2027.
I am calling on him to dissolve the National Assembly because we have reached the end of the road, and there is no solution today, nor will there be tomorrow. The joke is over. The farce has gone on long enough. The French are fed up with this situation. And in this case, Emmanuel Macron, by resisting institutions as he does, irrationally, is putting the country in a terribly complicated situation, and his own camp as well.
This frustration is starting to define the Macron era. When Emmanuel Macron swept to power in 2017, he promised a democratic revolution. 8 years later, France is trapped in a political loop. Prime ministers come and go, governments fall and reform, but nothing really changes. Commentators say that Macron's biggest problem isn't his opposition, it's his style. He's governed like a president who prefers control over conversation, and that has consequences. The far right has never been stronger. Marine Le Pen's party is closer than ever to power, and Macron's approval rating has slipped to a record low. It is at just about 15%. So where does France go from here? Some say Macron could try to reinvent himself again. Others think it's too late. His promise of renewal has faded into fatigue. But one thing is clear. The Fifth Republic was built to bring stability. Today, its leaders are falling faster than they can be sworn in. And that may be Macron's biggest test yet. Not just as a president, but as a keeper of the very idea of the French Republic itself. And now let's talk about Syria. The war-torn country is holding an election. For the first time in more than 50 years, no member of the Assad family is on the ballot. The new president, Ahmed al-Sharaa, is now firmly in charge. Al-Sharaa was a rebel and a former member of the Al-Qaeda's Syria branch. He says he now wants to rebuild Syria through democracy. But this election was not a full vote. Ordinary Syrians didn't take part. Local electors chose most of the seats, and the president will appoint the rest. Critics say the election is still too controlled. Supporters say it's a beginning, a small but symbolic step for a country trying to move on after years of war.
Syria has voted for the first time without the Assad family. That alone makes this election historic. And it comes 10 months after Bashar al-Assad was forced out. He fled to Russia after his army collapsed. The new president, Ahmed al-Sharaa, led that offensive. He was once a rebel commander, and earlier part of Al-Qaeda's Syrian branch. Now he says he wants to build democracy.
The task of rebuilding Syria is a collective task. It is not entrusted to a specific person or a few individuals. Rather, all Syrians must contribute to rebuilding their country.
The vote is to pick a new parliament. It's called the People's Assembly. But this was not a normal election. Ordinary Syrians didn't vote. Instead, about 7,000 electors voted on their behalf. They were local teachers, business people, and community leaders. They chose 140 of the 210 seats. President al-Sharaa is filling the remaining 70 himself. Officials say this system was the only option right now. Millions are displaced. Many lost their homes and ID papers during the war. Universal voting, they say, just isn't possible yet. Critics call this a managed exercise. They say al-Sharaa still controls who gets elected. But others see it as a beginning. After 5 decades of dictatorship, even a partial vote feels like progress.
Frankly, I am not hopeful for anything. I have no hope for anything at all. Nothing. I hope that something will happen for the better.
These are the first elections that Syrians are participating in since the fall of Bashar al-Assad. We hope that they will proceed towards the better, God willing, through integrity and through people who will be competent for all of Syria, not just for the city of Aleppo.
Ahmed al-Shara's journey is complicated. He once fought against the Syrian state. He led Islamist fighters during the war. His movement HTS ruled parts of northern Syria. When Assad fell, al-Shara took charge in Damascus. He promised unity, he promised reform, and he promised to end one-man rule. At the United Nations, he spoke about rebuilding Syria. He said the country needs collective effort and inclusion. But many Syrians remain cautious. They remember his militant past, and they worry about reports of attacks on minorities. So, how democratic was this election? There are no political parties, all old ones were dissolved. New ones haven't been approved yet. Candidates ran as independents. They had only a few days to campaign. There were no debates, and no televised appeals for votes. Women made up just 14% of all candidates, and not everyone could even vote. Voting took place in schools and libraries. Each voter had to hand in their phone before entering. Ballot boxes were sealed and guarded. More than 1,500 candidates took part. Many were local figures, doctors, teachers, shopkeepers. In Damascus, voters queued quietly. For some, it was the first vote of their lives. The results are still coming in. But early reports show al-Shara's allies dominating the assembly. That's not a surprise. He picked a third of them himself. This parliament will write a new constitution. It will also pass a new election law. That law could one day open the door to full public voting. Syria is trying to move forward. Over a decade of war has destroyed its cities. Millions remain displaced. The economy is shattered. Al-Shara says he wants reconciliation. He calls this the start of a new era. But trust will take time. Minorities are still nervous. They fear another centralized regime with a new face. For now, Syrians are watching closely. Some feel hope, others fear history will repeat itself. Syria's democracy is still fragile. The rules are limited, and power remains concentrated. But this vote marks a beginning. For the first time in decades, the ballot, not the bullet, is shaping Syria's future.
For years, India's digital story has been told in the language of American logos. Google, WhatsApp, Microsoft, Facebook. But now, New Delhi wants to rewrite that story. And at the heart of this campaign stands an unlikely protagonist. A company called Zoho. It's founded by Sridhar Vembu. 2 decades later, Zoho quietly runs a global software empire. Over 50+ cloud apps powering everything from CRM systems to spreadsheets. Its a business suite rivals Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace. And now it has something new. A homegrown messaging app called Aratai. Now that's Tamil for chat. The government says it's time Indians give it a try. In the past few weeks, India's Education Ministry has made Zoho the official office suite. It is now compulsory for all its departments, phasing out Microsoft and Google tools. Ministers have publicly flaunted presentations made on Zoho. It's part symbolism and part strategy, a bid for digital sovereignty. The idea that India should control its own data, infrastructure, and online ecosystems, one that is free from foreign dependency. And for India's digital self-reliance dream, one symbol might just be Aratai. Now, Zoho's new messaging app that's quietly making waves. It's light, it runs on weak internet connections, it works on low-cost phones, And more importantly, it even has an Android TV version, a feature WhatsApp still doesn't offer. But it's also built with privacy in mind, promising users that their data won't be shared with advertisers or foreign entities. Ministers are already on it, entrepreneurs are praising it, and downloads are surging. For a brief moment, RTI even overtook WhatsApp on the Play Store charts. But behind the celebrations lies a bigger question. Can it last? India has been here before. There was Coup, which was billed as the Indian Twitter. For a year, it looked like India had built its own social network. Then the funding dried up. The servers went quiet and Coup shut down. There was also Hike Messenger. It was once India's WhatsApp rival. Hike 2 faced a similar fate. Despite millions of downloads, the novelty faded. Users drifted back to WhatsApp. The same story repeated across a dozen short video apps. The likes of Moj, Chingari and Mitron, they all promised a TikTok replacement, but they all disappeared due to poor innovation and investor fatigue. So why do Indian apps struggle? Because building an app is easy, keeping users is hard. Most Indian platforms fall into what many call the copycat trap, cloning global products without improving them. Zoho has one advantage here. It is profitable and independent. It is also debt-free. But messaging itself is a different beast. Apps like WhatsApp and Telegram operate at massive scales. There are billions of users, and they have server farms across continents. Encryption technologies are perfected over years. For RTI to complete, it must build a world-class infrastructure. And then there's trust. Indians may love the idea of a made-in-India app, but they also value reliability. RTI currently doesn't encrypt all messages end-to-end, a red flag for privacy-conscious users. So India's tech story stands today at a crossroads. On one side, there's ambition, the desire to build a very own digital ecosystem. On the other, there's realism. Zoho's RTI may not dethrone WhatsApp overnight, but that's not really the point. What matters is that India is finally trying to build, not borrow. Our next story takes us to Mount Everest. A powerful snowstorm struck the world's tallest mountain. On the Tibetan side, hundreds of trekkers were caught off guard. This came after the weather conditions changed without warning. Within hours, a blizzard buried camps and trails under heavy snow. The snowstorm has passed now, but rescue teams are still working to bring people down. Some have reached safety, others are still making their way off the mountain. Here's our report on how a calm trek turned into a race to survive.
They came chasing adventure, to walk among the clouds, to stand at the foot of the world's tallest mountain, not in a photograph, but in its shadow. The air was thin and the weather was calm. The trail wound through the Karma Valley in Tibet's eastern Himalayas. Hundreds of trekkers were exploring the area as China marked its Golden Week holiday. The eastern slopes of Everest attract hikers for their open trails and clear autumn skies. At the time, conditions appeared stable, but the calm didn't last long. By Friday evening, snow began to fall. By Saturday, the storm had strengthened. A blizzard swept across the eastern face of Mount Everest. It's unclear if other sides of the mountain were affected. Soon, the sky and the ground were of the same colour. Within hours, tents disappeared under snow. Paths vanished, and nearly 1,000 trekkers were trapped on Everest's eastern slopes. The blizzard struck near the Kangshung face of Mount Everest, in Tibet's Tingri County. Snow reached nearly a metre deep in parts of the Karma Valley. The wind roared through altitudes above 4,900 metres, where even breathing is difficult. Trekkers said they cleared snow from their tents every few minutes to keep them from collapsing. Some barely slept. Others tried to descend into darkness, guided only by headlamps. By Sunday, the rescue operations had begun. Hundreds of Tibetan villagers joined official rescue teams, including firefighters and emergency workers. They carried ropes, food and livestock to open paths through the whiteout. By nightfall, more than 350 trekkers had reached the town of Catering. Rescuers stayed in contact with another 200 still higher up the slopes. Firefighters led hikers through knee-deep snow. Some stumbled while others were carried to waiting vehicles. Ticket sales and entry to the entire Everest scenic area were suspended. Tourism had turned into an emergency operation. In Catering, locals greeted the rescued with hot tea and food. One trekker said she had never seen weather like this in October. Another said her guide was shocked. He had climbed this route for years and never faced a storm so sudden. October is usually Everest's calmest month. The monsoon ends, skies clear, and temperatures stay steady. But this year, that calm turned into chaos. This wasn't just an Everest storm. The same weather system swept across Nepal and India. It triggered floods and landslides across both the countries. And in China's Qinghai province, one hiker died of hypothermia and altitude sickness. For now, the search on Everest continues. Rescue teams say they will keep going until everyone is safely brought down. For those who made it back, the climb was no longer about the summit. It became about endurance and survival. A reminder that even with forecasts and technology, this mountain still decides when the climb is over.
For most of us, holidays mean adventure, new places, new experiences, new memories. But across India, a different kind of traveller is emerging. They're not chasing thrills, they're chasing calm. No schedules, no rush, just time to slow down and rest. From Goa's beaches to Himachal's hills, India's holidaymakers are trading busy itineraries for quiet escapes, and sometimes just for a really good nap. Hotels have started taking notice of this trend, and they're now offering the perfect break for these travellers. Our final report tonight has more.
What if your next vacation wasn't about sightseeing? What if you skipped the early alarms, the tour buses, and the must-see lists? What if your only plan was to do nothing? To switch off, stretch out, and finally catch up on your sleep? Welcome to India's newest travel obsession, Napations. Yes, you heard that right. Holidays specifically designed for sleeping. In a country where millions struggle to get enough rest, the trend is catching on fast. Reports show that most Indians are not getting enough rest. Nearly 13% of the population sleeps fewer than 5 hours a night. Experts say adults need at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep daily. But with endless deadlines, buzzing phones, and city noise, a good night's sleep has become a luxury item. And this exhaustion is changing how people travel. More travelers are now seeking rest and renewal over hectic bucket list activities. Instead of chasing new sights, they're chasing silence. Instead of rushing through schedules, they're slowing down. Travelers are prioritizing rest, peace, and mental renewal over crowded itineraries. Hotels and resorts are cashing in. Sleep-focused packages now promise the perfect nap. Common features include memory foam beds and blackout curtains. Herbal teas, spa treatments, and aromatherapy are provided. Some places offer tea-infused baths. One can even have breakfast at any time they want. Guided or unguided walks are also arranged to relax the mind. It's a very different kind of luxury, one that doesn't need noise or crowds. In short, travelers are ditching checklists for calm. From Himachal Pradesh's misty hills to Kerala's tranquil backwaters, several places are slowly becoming sleep vacation sanctuaries. The focus is on silence and natural therapies. Globally, this trend is part of something much bigger. The sleep tourism market is valued at over $600 billion. Analysts predict it will cross 1 trillion by 2028, and India is wide awake to the opportunity. Around 85% of Indian travelers reportedly say they are now more mindful of their sleep, with 20% considering sleep a primary activity for their next holiday. Hotels offering day-use rooms or sleep-centric packages are seeing a steady growth. Sleep tourism reflects a broader shift in the travel mindset. It's redefining what a good vacation looks like. Less adventure, more recovery. And India's growing sleep crisis is fueling that change. It reflects a deeper truth, that in today's world, sleep is becoming the new measure of wellness. Napations offer a solution for the tired, the stressed, and the sleep-deprived. They're more than a passing fad, because sometimes the best vacations are those that give you a good night's sleep.
And now it's time for Vantage shots, images that tell the story. North Korea's Kim Jong-un inspects a naval destroyer. In Nepal, an emergency crew rescues a pregnant woman during the floods. And Bayern Munich players visit Munich's iconic Oktoberfest. Finally, taking you back in history, on this day in 1973, war erupted in West Asia. Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel during the Yom Kippur holiday. After 3 weeks of fighting, an Egyptian-Israeli ceasefire was secured by the United Nations. Leaving you on that note, thank you for watching. See you tomorrow. It's a busy day in West Asia. All the focus is on Egypt, on its Red Sea resort town called Sharma el-Sheikh. This is where the crucial peace talks are happening. Talks to end the war in Gaza. Over in Washington, Donald Trump is getting impatient. He is pushing both sides